Hey guys, today I'm going to run down my top 10 3DS and Wii U games of 2015. New Year's is hopefully tonight if I get the schedule correct, because today it's only Tuesday for me. But I figured it would be pretty appropriate to do this at literally the end of the year. Just a quick disclaimer though, of course, these are games that I've actually played, so while something like Xenoblade X looks amazing, I've never even played 10 minutes of it, 5 minutes of it, so I can't really comment on those kinds of games. In addition, all the games mentioned are those released in North America in 2015. There are a few games on this list that were released in other regions slightly before 2015, or even way before 2015. But I'm giving you this list from North America, so they still count. That said, let's get right into it. For number 10, I chose Splatoon. It's a third-person shooting game that is a new IP for Nintendo this year. It is mainly focused around multiplayer game modes, but there is a single-player component. The single player itself isn't too bad, and honestly it has some of the most memorable bosses I've played ever, and it was pretty fun and a great introduction to the game. But the core of the game is multiplayer, and honestly, that's where it kind of gets a little either or for me. While the multiplayer can be fun, it did drag on a little bit for me personally, and even though I really like the innovative game style of diving into the ink, hiding, and just painting the whole map, I felt that there were some problems here and there with the game. A few issues was that the map rotation limited it to a few certain specific maps for a large portion of the day. You would switch between 2 or maybe 3 maps for 4 or 6 hours, and then they would change. And it made the game get incredibly stale incredibly quickly. That said, it really is a great game, and if you enjoyed third-person shooters or shooters in general, this game might be the game for you. For number 9, we're going to head over to the 3DS for our first game on the list, and that is going to be Yokai Watch. It's a monster collecting game that has been compared to Pokemon, but unlike Pokemon, it does have its own flair. It didn't seem that interesting at first, but the battle system is incredibly intuitive. You don't control every single attack that the yokai dish out, but you do control a few aspects of the battle. You can rotate the wheel for who goes into battle, you can give them ultimate attacks at certain points, and you can make sure your yokai are fully powered through items and purifying. That said, there is even more depth before the battle begins, where you can change your personalities of the yokai and basically get a general battle strategy. The story itself isn't very good, and it doesn't really connect to itself very well, but it's a pretty lengthy game with quite a lot of side quests and quite a lot of things to do. The main gripe that I have against this game is that the collecting and capturing of the yokai is just awful. It's purely luck-based, and no matter how hard you try, even if you use the best items to capture the yokai, they might not join you. And that's a huge problem for a game that's all around capturing these yokai. If you want more information about the game and more of my personal opinion, be sure to check out my review of the game. This will be annotated somewhere in the video, but just click the link and it'll go right to it. For number 8, we're going to continue on with the 3DS, and we're going to be looking at Little Battler's Experience. This game is another game marketed towards kids, just like Yokai Watch, but it does have a lot of fun to it. You basically control robots in any kind of situation, but you're fighting with robots. These robots are highly customizable, where you can change out their legs, their body, their 2 arms, their heads, 2 weapons, and then even further with abilities. It's just huge into the customization. There's so many different robots to choose from. It's really, really fun. Each battle is pretty challenging, even if you go back to some of the beginning battles to fight, which you'll see in the video. It still takes some practice to get through. It still takes some skill. The battles might look a little slow on camera, but believe me when I say this, the battles are pretty fast-paced and very heavy on the action. The story itself is, again, another generic story, but I felt connected enough to it that I found it pretty interesting. Coming in at number 7 is going to be Codename Steam. Now, in my opinion, this is probably the sleeper hit of the year. It didn't get a lot of attention that it should have gotten, but it was really good. The premise is just straight up crazy, and I'm not even kidding. You play as famous literary heroes such as the Wizard of Oz cast, as well as Tom Sawyer, under the guidance of Abraham Lincoln in order to stop the Lovecraftian horror. You know, like Cthulhu and stuff. I think the characters, while they weren't developed as well as they could have been, the dialogue was engaging and I really enjoyed what the story was about. The gameplay, however, is a spin on third-person shooters and strategy RPGs. You command your units across grid-based combat as with normal strategy RPGs, but instead of the usual bird's-eye view where you see the entire field straight down, you're actually over the shoulder in a third-person shooter sort of camera. In addition, instead of going into animations like usual strategy RPGs do, you actually manually aim your gun at each point that you want to hit. It's a great mashup and was very, very enjoyable. Definitely check out my playthrough if you're interested. The playlist will be linked in an annotation on the video. For number 6, I chose Stella Glow for the 3DS. It's a strategy RPG and honestly has probably the best story out of all the games on this list. The story has you collecting witches in order to basically save the world. Now, it seems kind of boring, but the characters are so well developed. There's a lot of dialogue in this game, and while that might turn some people off, it's really crucial in understanding each character individually. I felt so connected to every single one of the characters, well, every single one of the main characters at least. The gameplay itself is pretty typical of strategy RPGs. You move units across a grid, they enter into an animation, the attack plays off, and so on and so forth. The catch, however, and some games do employ this catch as well, turn order is not based on teams, it's based on individual character speeds. So you can't just move your entire team in one turn, switch over to the enemy, and then come back to you. Every character has a different speed, including the enemies, so it's all mixed and matched. So it's just super strategic, and in addition to the gameplay itself, the game in general is just pure strategy. You get downtime, you have a limited amount of actions that you can do during downtime. Each action, in some way or the other, powers up your team. So you kind of have to make decisions at every single step of this game, and this is why I really like it. The whole game is strategy, the story is great, it's just a well put together team. If you do want some more information and more about my personal opinion, be sure to check out the annotation in the video right now, because that will link to my review. Now that we're getting into the top 5, so at number 5, I'm going to be putting Super Mario Maker for the Wii U. This game was made as a celebration of 30 years of Mario, and honestly, they knocked it out of the park. Basically, you, the player, can create Mario levels from 4 different themes. From these themes, you can then play the levels that you made, play other levels that users created. And what's great about this is that you have almost free reign of almost every single asset from those games, and you can create or recreate your own Mario levels. And it's just such a fantastic way to celebrate Mario. There's just so many levels to play online right now, and the game hasn't even been out for a year. Honestly, this is definitely my favorite Wii U game ever, so it's gonna be pretty easy to put it on this list. I should be hopefully doing a review for this game at some point this week or next week, so check out for that if you want more information. Coming in at number 4 is going to be SteamWorld Heist. SteamWorld Heist is yet another strategy RPG, but this one is honestly the best strategy RPG I've ever played. For starters, there is no grid-based combat. There's no overhead camera, there's nothing like that. Instead, it's a 2D plane and you're looking at it as if it's a profile view. So 2D movement, so you kind of go across lines, you know, there's horizontal, there's vertical, all that kind of movement. That's the first thing that I love. The second thing is that this game is so engaging. Combat isn't your normal combat in strategy RPGs. Much like Codename Steam, you actually have to manually aim your shots. But what's better about this is that each shot can ricochet off walls, so you can make these insane, crazy shots that bounce around the room only to knock off the guy's hat. It's just ridiculous, but it's implemented so well. The characters, in addition, are just so well written and so lovable. Honestly, there wasn't very many things bad about this game, and it's just such a dynamic, fluid, and highly engaging game that if you haven't checked it out yet, you really should. If you want to know more about this game, and specifically my personal opinions, be sure to check out the review I did, which, again, will be annotated. And now we're entering into the top 3. So these are going to be the top 3 games that I loved from 2015. So, starting at number 3 is The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask 3D. Now, this game was released for the 64, and I don't know what year, but it was very long ago. However, I've never played it before, so this was my first time ever playing it. As with most of the Legend of Zelda games, Majora's Mask is a combination of adventure, action, and puzzle solving. Majora's Mask has you fighting off evil, beating dungeons, and collecting as many masks as you can. You have to save the world from the moon crashing. And that's what I really liked about the game. It really engages and immerses you into the world because you have 3 days to stop the moon. However, there's a very awesome catch, and I hope this isn't a spoiler, but in case it is, maybe just skip ahead. You can control time. You can slow it down, speed it up, or even go back in time. And what's really awesome about that is that everything you do, like every time you beat a temple, you go back in time and then you can move on to the next temple, and that first temple was beaten. And I loved it because you get the pressure of having to do it in 3 days, but you have the options to not feel too rushed. And I love the feeling that the impending doom gives you that you can counter with your own power, and I just love that. In addition, the mask system is amazing. There's so many different masks, they give you so many different abilities, and so many of them are really unique. You know, something that you wouldn't see in any other game. And I love it. Animations for transforming into the major masks is amazing. It's great. It looks fantastic. And that's really it. I mean, this game is great, and it really has held up throughout the years. Going into number 2, I'm gonna go a little out of there, and that's the DLC Plague of Shadows for Shovel Knight. Now, while it's not a 3DS, Wii U, or Nintendo exclusive in general, it still came out for these systems this year. Shovel Knight is a platforming game that relives the old school style of games in a refreshingly modern way. It really gives you the difficulty of playing those old games, but it gives you some new feelings, new experiences, new ways to enjoy the game. Plague of Shadows takes that even further and makes the game just so much harder, but not in a bad way. It's actually a really satisfying difficulty. Plague of Shadows gives you a triple jump, and it's just, woo! The endless jumping abilities is amazing. The things that you can do now with these jumps are great. But that's not it. Not only that, but you're given a whole new weapon system. The main game of Shovel Knight has you wielding a shovel, you can get some various upgrades, but you're always using a shovel. For Plague of Shadows, you're always using a bomb, but there's so many more customizations for that bomb. There's casings that make it go flying in one direction or straight down. There's just a whole slew of things that these bombs do, and the customization is just so deep and so good. So satisfying, that's the word I'm looking for, so satisfying. And this game is such a satisfying game that even though multiple playthroughs through this game change absolutely nothing about the game, I can't stop but play it multiple times. There's just nothing that I don't like about this game. It's just such a unique platformer, especially Plague of Shadows. Plague of Shadows just kind of blows your mind with how they make the levels where you have to use bombs to jump over walls. It's just crazy, and I love it. So it's just an overall amazing experience, and the fact that once you buy Shovel Knight, Plague of Shadows is free, that's just too much for me to handle. So that is my number 2. And now for the final coup de grace, I think that's how you say it, I don't know. Number 1 is going to be Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate. Now this game, it's pretty easy to understand what the game's about. You are a hunter, and you hunt monsters. That's it. There's no gimmicks, there's no strings attached. Every single quest that you do is hunting a monster or has hunting monsters in it. But that's it. They don't even try and make it anything else. That is what it is. And that is where it thrives. You hunt monsters, and these monsters are big, they're small, they're medium, they're round, I don't think they're square, but we're gonna say square anyway. There's so many monsters, they're all well designed, they all have unique characteristics to themselves. One monster is not gonna be the same as the other unless it's a subspecies, which, don't even get me started, there's so many things, there's so many monsters, and it's just great. And on top of that, the game is just all about you. All about you. You have a multitude of weapons to choose from. You have a multitude of armors to choose from. You make your armors from the monsters, so you're killing this monster, you're like, this is the coolest looking monster ever. You kill him, you skin him, not to be graphic, but you do skin him, and then you go back, you make an armor out of him, and now you look like the monster. What is more to love about this game? You can play this however you want. You don't want to wear armor? Don't wear armor. You don't want to use a weapon? Well, you kind of have to use a weapon. But this game just has so much to it for such a simple premise. It's all about player choice. The game is in your hands. You're given a short narrative, basically hunt this because the next monster is causing destruction, and then you just go through the story. But once the story's over, there's so much more to do. There's multiplayer, there's single player. The game is yours to basically play. You play it how you want, you play it where you want, you do whatever you want. You can easily sink hundreds of hours into this game simply just hunting the monsters for fun. You don't even need an end goal. You just want to go out and kill this thing, and you do it, and it's great. It feels fantastic. And that's number 1. I can't, it's by far my favorite game I've ever played. So that's about it, my top 10 3DS and Wii U games of 2015. I'm sure there were a lot of other choices to make. I know I was a little toss-up. Maybe I'll give some honorable mentions. I probably won't. Don't take that. I'll do honorable mentions in a blog post at some other point. But yeah, I mean, those are the games that I 100% liked. You know, I honestly surprised myself that Majora's Mask was third. Mainly because before I really started playing Majora's Mask, I wasn't really too much of a fan of Legend of Zelda games, so that kind of surprised me. But either way, thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I hope to see you guys at the next episode. Peace.